Hi, friend. Welcome to the Tilt and Shift Photography Podcast. Thank you for being here. Today's the first episode of what I hope to be a great deal, many episodes. Um, so today I'm just starting with me. I'm going to start with a little bit of my story so you can get a sense of who I am and whether I'm someone that you want to listen to. And I'm going to start by talking about my own shift in perspective. So, the Tilt and Shift Photography Podcast is where we talk about with creatives about uh, shifts in their lives that brought about big changes in how they create, how they show up in their business, even how things are going in their personal life. So, today I'm going to start with my own story. I've had many of these big shifts, which is why I'm so curious about how other people do theirs. I always wonder how people get from one point to another. And the reason I wonder is because I'm just curious. I want to know whether or not I can apply what they're doing to me. And that's the other point of this podcast is I take people's story and I am going to analyze it into a lesson so that you can work on it for yourself. Sometimes when we hear motivational stories or stories of inspiration, we're like, yay. And then we're kind of inspired for a bit, but we don't have like a technical, don't have something to grasp, like to actually apply it to what we're going to do for ourselves. It's like having those inspiration porn things up on the wall of like, yay, live life this way. And like, how do you actually do that? That's the Virgo in me being like, okay, let's get real about this. How do we actually make that happen? And so that's what I really want to do with this format, with these discussions I have with people, is I want to help you find ways to incorporate other people's lessons into a tactile, practical, doable lesson for yourself. So the podcast is going to be one episode is going to be an interview with a cool person, and then the following episode is going to be, okay, what did we learn and how do we apply that to ourselves? Today's episode, I am going to take you through my own a big shift that I had, and then we're going to do a little journaling exercise at the end, and I'm going to ask you some questions and you're going to have time to work through it. And then I would love for you to email me and let me know how it goes and let me know if it helped. Let me know if it inspired you to do other things or think about something differently. Share that with me. I really want to create a community where we have this back and forth feedback. So, a big shift for me, and this is going to sound sort of weird when I say it out loud, it like makes perfect sense. But you know how things sometimes don't make sense when they're in your own brain until they actually come out your mouth. So, a huge change for me, a huge shift, was when I realized that my parents were human. Obviously, not in like an alien sort of way, but I was raised with the expectation that you don't question what people tell you, especially not people that are older and more experienced than you. If they tell you to do something, you do it. And that's not at the core of who I am, but circumstances in my life were such that I was not in a headspace to have the wherewithal to discover that unwavering belief in authority was something that I could question. I do it now, but probably because of this realization, actually. So when I realized that my parents were human, and what I mean by this is it was actually a light bulb moment where I had finished my master's degree in nutrition and physiology, which came about because I was ignoring what I really wanted to do, which was I really wanted to be a writer. I really wanted to tell stories. But at a kind of formative time in my life, my mom said to me, "You're never going to make any money doing that." And she didn't say it in a way as to dash all my hopes and dreams, although it did kind of have that effect. I'm sorry, Mom, if you're listening. It broke my heart. But worse, it made me doubt. It made me doubt what I wanted to do with my life. Or it made me doubt like my feelings. It made me doubt that, well, like there's this thing saying that I want to be a storyteller, but these people that I love and trust are telling me that I shouldn't do that. So I think that was in grade like 11 or 12. And it had happened earlier. I'm going to refer to a story in our next episode. I talk with Erica Mann, and we talk a little bit about this, finding your calling, or like finding out what you wanted to do with your life. And I did know, in hindsight, I did know what I wanted to do, but I had these messages that my life was going to be really hard if I did that. Um, Artists don't make money. And when I realized a few years later, so I went to school, I got my master's, and I finally had enough like life experience to realize to start questioning some of these messages that had been given to me. And then it dawned on me that maybe what my parents said wasn't the right advice. maybe I shouldn't listen to that. And it was a very tentative step towards trusting this other voice that was in my head that was like, "Hey, you love talking to people. You love formulating stories. You love pulling, like English is your favorite class." Like I started to kind of listen to that voice rather than this kind of overarching parental voice that was in my life for the previous 20-ish years. And this is not to say that my parents didn't believe. My parents are very supportive now. They're supportive in a way that I need them to be. I shouldn't say they weren't supportive then. They were supportive then. They had saved tons of money for me to go to school. They worked their butts off to give us a safe home and food and like the things that parents do, they were doing. But they lived they were living a really safe life, or they were from a generation where they really valued safety. Safety meaning a quote unquote stable job with a stable company where you got benefits and you got a weekly paycheck no matter what happened. That's stability. My parents really wanted me to have a stable life because that was really valuable to them. And I can't fault them for that. They knew that was something that they wanted. It made a huge difference in their lives. They're going to pass that along to me. In doing so, that created fear in me. It created a fear of instability, or a belief that what I wanted to do with my skills and my interests was not as valuable as having stability, which it kind of sounds funny to say because I mean, essentially, I guess we're all kind of striving for some sort of stability and maybe predictability in terms of where am I going to buy groceries and how am I going to pay my rent? Those are very real, absolutely important, incredible, like incredibly uh, uh, important things that we have to address as humans. But it doesn't mean that we can't do those things by following our heart. So let me say it again. Being stable, having stability and safety does not have to come at the cost of doing what you want to do with your life. You can be an artist, you can be a creative, and still have a stable income. I promise. I promise you can. I'm living proof, many of us are living proof that you can do this. All right. So, with my parents having this focus on encouraging me to have a safe life, what they perceived as safe, which was a university degree and a job, which again, very important, very important. But I didn't have the flexibility in terms of how I was thinking to realize that that could come from a bunch of different directions. It didn't have to be a university prescribed future. So my parents really, they always said that they just wanted me to be happy. And again, happiness to them was being stable. Things were very scary. They're scary. You're not happy if you feel unstable, if you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from. And for them, an artist, that is something that they would struggle with. Like you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from if you're an artist. That was their interpretation, and that's what they said to me. So when I realized that my parents that my parents had a history, and that my parents had a they had a lens through which they were looking at the world, and that's the lens with which they were parenting me, and they were providing me the advice that they probably wish someone had said to them, perhaps, or they were advising me on what had worked for them and what helped them to feel happy. Unfortunately, that didn't work for me. That wasn't what my heart was going for. So what they were saying was that following my heart wasn't safe, and safety is at the core of our drive as humans, you know? Like, if you think about how we're coded, the fight or flight syndrome, or that's not a syndrome, fight or flight response to fear, we are constantly seeking safety. So having a job as a creative where there are arguably more fears involved because you don't have perceivably, you don't have a stable income, which I would argue that is not true. Being a creative digs at a lot of the fears that may have been implanted on us as kids. So here's the lesson that I'm trying to get at with this roundabout way. If we think back, or if we dig into some of the fears that we have, it's quite likely that they were planted in us out of intentionally or not, fears that were given to us by people that cared about us. Maybe they didn't, but in my case, I know my parents cared, and that was why they gave me that was why they gave me that advice. And so it's been a long time, a lifetime of figuring out where their fears end and I begin. Where do I begin? Where do I begin living a life that is fulfilling for me while I lay down the fears that they unintentionally impressed upon me. Or maybe they did intentionally do it, Like if she's scared, she's going to do the thing that is going to result in the most stable life. I'm not sure. But here's the thing. As creatives, as human beings, it's natural. It is absolutely natural to have fears. It's built into our genetic code. How we manage those fears is what determines whether or not we live a fulfilling life. So I want you to pull out your journals. I want you to open it up to a fresh page. And I'm going to ask you a question. And I want you to think really deeply about this for a few moments. Okay. So I want you to write down the words. What am I afraid of? What am I afraid of? For some of us, it could be the fear of rejection. We could be scared of being rejected. We could be scared of being judged. We could be scared of failure. We could be scared of loss. We could be scared of just being uncomfortable. That feeling of discomfort, not feeling quite right. Worry, being scared of being worried about being worried. We could be scared of regrets. We could be scared of being unheard. We could be scared of not being ourselves. So fear is translated in our body as being unsafe. And sometimes we separate these kind of mental fears away from our body. But if you think about these fears, you may be experiencing some of this in your body. You may, maybe your mouth got a little dry. I know mine did. Maybe you have a tightness in your chest. Maybe you find that your palms are sweating a little bit. Maybe your heart rate increased. So that is telling you that even though you're just thinking about this, it is creating that stress response in your body. And that is telling you, don't do that thing, because those things don't feel good to us. However, we can move beyond our fears. And I'm going to give you a little insight into how we do that. So you've written down some of the things you're afraid of. I want you to flip the page over, or turn the page, literally turn the page. We're going to metaphorically turn it for you as well, hopefully. I want you to write on this page, and only these 5 words. Their fears are not mine. Their fears are not mine. And the reason I want you to write that is to acknowledge that it is okay not to continue fearing the things other people have told you to fear. That doesn't have to be your story. It might be, but it doesn't have to be. And perhaps just acknowledging that is enough to help you consider this next question I'm going to ask you, which is, turn the page one more time. Blank page here. What would my life be like without these fears? And I might be losing some of you here, like fear is natural, like there's no, like I have to worry about this stuff. And I agree, it's very natural to worry. But what we worry about, we focus on, rather than giving our brain space to figure out other ways of problem solving. If we are problem solving from a space of fear, we're going to make really really safe decisions that are very likely to keep us in the same spot. So if you're hoping to make some sort of change in your business or in your life, making those choices from a place of fear will keep you where you are. When we consider what our life is like without those fears, that allows our brain to expand to other possibilities. And when we can see another possibility, we can start to create steps towards that possibility. So, what would life be like without these fears? I want you to write down where you would live, what your house would be like, what would you do during your day, what is the prevailing feeling that you would kind of wake up with. And I'm not disregarding grief or sadness. I'm not asking you to wear rose-colored glasses. I'm just saying, what would your outlook, your general outlook, what do you want that to be? If you didn't have these fears, how would you look at the world? It may take you a few minutes. If so, I want you to pause this. I really want you to think deeply about what your life would be like if you didn't have the fears that were holding you back from this thing that you're trying to work towards, whether that's a more successful business, whether that's really defining yourself in your art, or charging more for one of your wedding collections, or, asking for a testimonial, or shooting things in a way that you haven't seen other people do, but you feel kind of stuck and you want to keep doing what you're doing, but you feel like you want to change and you're scared to do that. What would your life be like if you didn't have those fears, if you just did the thing? So once you've got some idea of that, once you've got some of these, some endorphins flowing, a little dopamine flowing, the next thing, and this is what is really important to me with the Tilt and Shift podcast, is to give you a tool to help you move from these thoughts we're thinking about our fears and what life would be like without them, to what can I actually do about this? Like, if these fears are so normal and they're pretty ingrained, how do I go about mining them? Getting rid of them, pulling them out, teasing them away from legit actual things that I need to be focused on so that I can work on that, and things that are maybe kind of irrational and no longer fitting your story and how you want to evolve. So I'm going to give you a tool that I use with teenagers. So I am a leader with a nonprofit organization called Girl in the Wild, and we take teens who identify as girls into wild spaces. And it's a free camp. We have a curriculum, a kind of robust curriculum that teaches them a great deal of things. And one of them is about how to manage fear. Because when we can develop the skill of bravery in the face of fear, it helps us build confidence so that we can make choices that are better aligned with our values and how we want to live our lives. So the exercise that we do is called, it's a stoplight system. You may have heard about this before, or you can think about it as concentric circles. So in the middle of that circle, it's green. It's good. We're golden. I feel safe. Everything is fine. Then we move a slightly bigger circle, or if we're thinking about stoplights, we're moving into the yellow zone. So the yellow zone is when we're in a situation where you're like, maybe I should slow down a little bit. Maybe I should kind of get better grounding of my surroundings. what's happening here. You have like, maybe there's a few kind of, I don't want to say alarms, but there's like some moments of pause where you're like, okay, okay, I'm good, but I'm just going to slow down a little bit. And then there's red, where your flight or flight response is going off. You're having trouble thinking a little bit. You are feeling really anxious. You're scared. And it doesn't feel safe. Safe in a way that you can't manage. So if we think about comfort, we talk about it as in terms of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, yet not being blown out of proportion or like mind-blowingly scared. So getting comfortable with discomfort is a really, really valuable skill in not only if you're running around in mountains or a forest or whatever. It's not just about adventure or sport. We often think about like getting uncomfortable when we're like starting a new exercise routine or something. No, you can get we have to learn to be comfortable with discomfort as a way of building bravery. Interestingly, my guest next week is Erica Mann, and I just watched a talk where she talked about bravery as a skill. And so I'm going to bring that in here, because we often think about bravery and courage when we think about overcoming fear. We think someone has to be really courageous, or they have to be really brave. And we often talk about that as like an inherent thing that they have. They're so courageous. I disagree. If you look at those people and what they do, they've learned to become comfortable with discomfort, and they have built that up through a great deal of experience and analysis and questioning and education. It's not this, when we talk about addressing our fears, people are like, feel the fear and do it anyway. And it's not like that. And for the vast majority of us who aren't like inherent headfirst divers, you can still overcome a whole bunch of fear without the possible repercussions of not of being unsafe when you're diving in. So think of bravery as a skill. We can build it. We can build it by practicing intentionally being outside of our comfort zone and reflecting on how we managed that situation. Okay? So ways that you can do this. So this is your assignment for the week. I want you to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. So I want you to think of a situation, and it could be like going into a photo shoot without your favorite lens. It could be asking a client for a testimonial. It could be presenting your packages or your collections face to face, talking about money face to face, rather than just like sending them a little email and hoping they respond. It could be leaving your day job, or like making a plan to go to part-time, or something that is like, oh, that's outside my comfort zone. But I want you to pick something that you will intentionally put you outside of that green zone. I want you to go into the yellow zone, and I want you to sit in there. I want you to do some stuff in there, because the more time we spend in the yellow zone, the more evidence we have that our green zone can grow. And what I mean by that is the yellow zone is only yellow until you've done it a couple of times, and then it becomes comfortable. You have the evidence that you can do this thing. So give yourself a task, something that kind of makes you go like, oh my God, I don't want to do it. Pick a task, write down how it makes you feel, write down all the little things that are happening in your brain and in your body. Go and do it. Go do the task. And then when you come back, write down how you felt. Write down how you felt. Were you exhilarated? Did you push too far? Did it feel good? Do you feel like empowered? Was it not that bad? Are you relieved? What are these feelings? Because feelings dictate our thoughts, and our thoughts dictate our actions. So if we can get comfortable feeling uncomfortable, that is going to change how we think, and how we think is going to change what we do. Okay? So change how you feel by getting used to being uncomfortable, getting more used to that zone. It's going to change how you think, because you're going to think, hey, I can actually do this. And then that's going to change what you choose to do next. Okay? Give that a shot. Let me know how it goes. I will read all of your emails. Thank you for leaving a review. I cannot wait to share my conversation with you next week with Erica Mann. We're going to delve into a little bit of what we talked about today, expand on it a bit. But I really just want you to consider what your life would be like if you didn't have fears, or those fears had less power over your choices. Okay? Email me, connect with me. Thanks for being here. I'm grateful for you. Have an awesome day.